So let's bring in right now the author, poet, and writer in residence at Vanderbilt University. So this is a Vandy conspiracy also.
Anchor
Caroline Randall Williams. Caroline, let's read from your piece for the New York Times titled A Loving Chastisement for America. And you write in part this: Joe Biden has won, but it doesn't feel like it's over. Those who voted for the Republican, a staggering 70 million as of Friday evening, will find a more conventional ambassador next time. The 45th president was an aberration only insofar of his corruption, and it was brazen instead of subtle, his appearance clownish instead of slick. But the people who voted for him are plenteous, and they have been conditioned for this bigotry not just by the last 4 years, but by centuries. I'm on America's side, but as my grandfather said, love involves chastisement. I love the idea of an America that is free and equal, but we are not there yet. And Caroline, I especially loved this line, and I read it yesterday, and it's why I wanted so much for you to be on the show. It's beautiful. Thanks to my father, whom I loved very much, I am an unabashed, fairly old-fashioned patriot. That surprises people. But why can't I speak out against America's ills and then, with unreserved good faith, contemplate its promise?
Joe, I'm so grateful to you for having me on the show, first of all, this morning. And second of all, for hearing the right spirit behind the piece. And then third, for picking out that line, because to me, it really speaks to the necessity that we need to have to return to embracing the fact that two things can be true at once. And I think about just the last segment, where y'all talked about how Washington established norms for the presidency. And I thought to myself, though, norms are not laws, right? The question of the way we expect an American president to act, he did establish some norms, but he also had some norms that we, thank God, have abandoned. We don't expect it to be a norm any longer that presidents own slaves, for example, or deny women the right to vote. It's really important to me that we maintain a practice of continuing to relentlessly put things into context and frame and reframe them so that we can really push this experiment to live up to the capacity of our dream for it.
Caroline, it's Willie Geist. I am a part of this Vanderbilt conspiracy, so it's great to see you. Proudly so. It's an amazing piece. I hope everybody reads it because you tell your own story so well and so deeply, and how far it goes back to your grandfather being one of the first black men elected since Reconstruction in the state of Tennessee, your father being a conservative Republican who actually worked for George W. Bush in the United States Army. So when you sat down to write this, you're looking at these election results coming in, you're saying, okay, Joe Biden won. For you, that's the good news. For a lot of people in the country, that's a good news. But now we're looking at 71 million people who voted again for Donald Trump, many, many more than voted for him in 2016. So what did that tell you, and how did that compel you to write this piece?
I think it told me an old, hard truth, which is that people are prepared to vote either for economics above equity, which is inherently a position of privilege that is at best ignorant and at worst racist. And it also told me that Lee Atwater was really smart, and that whatever he planted in the seeds of the White House and in the minds of Americans abides and is terrifying. And I really think that, it called me to call to account the Republicans that haven't yet followed Joe's model and Nicole Wallace's model and Michael Steele's model of really, coming to reproach their party. Because I think that what the party needs to reckon with is this question of what do you do with the fact that at the moment the conservative ideological set is not, and I don't know if it ever will again be, the popular will of the American people if you actually excise the bigots from the base. Because you have to wonder, is there really a form of old-fashioned conservatism that can be effectively applied to American politics when you take into account human error? And by that I mean implicit bias and social and political structures that currently count on the decency of the people with the power in order for equity to be ensured in terms of the application of the law. And then if there is a form of old-fashioned conservatism that can be applied, what does that look like? because, you know, for Black people in the country, there is no separating of cultural issues from practical political issues, because the practical truth of my life is that it matters, right? And if the policies on the other side don't reinforce that, I don't know how I can come to the table.
Yeah, Gene Robinson.
So for chastisement to work, the person being chastised has to, in fact, feel chastised. And how do you induce that feeling? How do you induce that knowledge?
Well, you know, I think it's we have to figure that out, because I think, you know, Joe talked about a sort of cultural civil war that's happening. I think economics are the first one. That's why, you know, I lived in Mississippi for 5 years and loved it. And it was costing them money to have that flag on their flag. And so they changed it. And I think that maybe we have to try a different tactic. And I think that might be part of it moving forward.
Caroline, I'm so thankful that you're on today. And I love you said what I've caught myself saying more and more. It's almost like I'm a DBT counselor. Two things can be true at the same time. There can be truths in 1619 and 1776, and we need to figure out how to bring those two truths together. And thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you come back.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you. That does it for us this morning. Chris Jansing picks up the coverage right now. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.